I want to spend just about 5 minutes borrowing from my favorite example of the scholarship of teaching and learning. And it's drawn from history. It speaks perhaps a little bit more to me as a political scientist. History is light years ahead of my discipline in terms of this type of work. But as I talk about a history example, I'd like you to try and think with me how you might make this work in your own work. Sam Weinberg puzzles out similar things that I do. What is expert thinking? What does novice thinking look like? And what can we learn from how experts approach a task that will inform how we teach our undergrads in his case? Weinberg uses what's called the think aloud method. I love the think aloud method. I love working this way. Sometimes I do it in formal research. I've published a piece or two that have used think alouds. Sometimes I just use it in a regular class. Hearing thoughts as they occur. Handing students documents and saying, read these. Read them aloud. Tell me what you're thinking as you're going through it. Doing these think alouds is like the easiest thing for a researcher. I just sit across the table from a student. They start reading documents out loud. If they go quiet for too long, I say, what are you thinking now? And that's really all I have to do. What are you thinking now? What are you thinking now? Now what are you thinking? I feel like, I'm practicing to be a psychiatrist. And how long have you felt that way? Right? So here's what Weinberg does. Weinberg is interested in how students use source material. So he gives them a packet of documents on Lexington and Concord, asking them the question, who fired the first shot? Great historical question. He does this with national merit scholars, high school seniors who have won national merit scholars, really bright kids, and history professors. Some who study colonial history, but others who study medieval history, Japanese history. He discovers there are no knowledge differences. When he gives them a closed-ended test on knowledge about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, there are no differences. Newsflash, high school seniors know more about the Battle of Lexington and Concord than scholars of Japanese history. Not too surprising. I like to say that I know a hell of a lot about American politics, and I can identify Canada as the country north of us. We narrow and segment what we study. But they go about the task very differently. If you give an undergraduate a pile of documents about the Battle of Lexington and Concord, they will read that pile of documents in the order in which you hand it to them. They will start at the top of page 1 and go to the bottom of page 8. They will treat each source it is written on the page, therefore it's a useful source. And they will read it all consecutively. Historians have learned you don't do that. The first thing the historians do, they take the documents, and where do their eyes scan? Bottom of the page. What's the source? Oh, look, this is a diary that was kept from a soldier. This is a high school textbook. This is a Howard Fast novel. The historians consider the source. They read the sources in the order in which they were placed, in which they were written, so that you can see how later sources are informed by earlier sources. And they argue with the sources. I have read some of Weinberg's transcripts, and you know what? Historians argue. They take a document and say, well, you said this. Okay, but you said that. And Weinberg writes that they actually sometimes use different voices for the different sources. And you thought historians were boring. Right? They're using the different sources to go back and forth with them. What they're doing is they are creating that discussion, that argument. The undergrads, the high school seniors, read from top to bottom. They know as much about the Battle of Lexington and Concord as the professors do. They don't know how to learn more about it. They don't know how to study it. You know, folks, give me an hour and give me a good Wikipedia page, and I can probably take something that's very important in your discipline and learn the facts almost as well as you can. Right? Tell me what are the... How many bones are there in the hand? Anybody know? Give me something like that. I could learn and memorize stuff that well. I can't get your understanding of it. That's what you have. That's what you need to give to your students. Let me move past this slide here. I want to wrap it up here by talking about some personal reasons for doing this work. Parker Palmer tells us we teach who we are. So who am I, and what does that mean for my teaching? Seems weird to do at the end of the talk, but if I may take just a couple of moments and talk a little bit about who I am, how I got here, and maybe some of what I say will resonate with some of you. I love my discipline. I love doing political science. I love election night. I love reading the polls and all of that stuff. But I was the kind of guy in graduate school that if it was the day I was supposed to be teaching, I flew out of bed ready to face the world, ready to hang with my students and really get some energy from them. And if it was the day I was supposed to be working on my dissertation, maybe the laundry needed to be done. And I know I made the bed 20 minutes ago, but maybe I should go check that the beds are still made. Right? That was me. And I've published some stuff in political science. I've published some stuff I'm proud of, but my passion was teaching and learning. My passion was my students. As I said to you right at the very beginning, I'm a teacher. That's what's in here. That's where my passion was. And what happened for me, I had a couple of experiences that I want to share. What happened for me is that as I made it through graduate school and the teaching sustained me and gave me enough energy to just get that dissertation over the edge, kind of like Sisyphus pushing the rock. Finally got it over the top. And then I went and I became a professor, got a job at Eastern in 1997, published a reasonable bit, taught, loved it all. And then one day, knowing me as well as he did, Matt Kaplan, a very dear friend of mine, gave me an article by Kathleen McKinney that talked about the scholarship of teaching and learning. I had never heard the phrase before. And I read this article and I thought about it and I said, oh my God, this is me. A year later, Matt stops by my house, says, here's an application to be a Carnegie Scholar, you should do this. Fill out an application, boom, get accepted, life changed, career changed, everything good. For me, I think I could have been doing this work earlier. I needed a community. I needed a community of people who do this work. I needed people who could read the stuff I was writing. I needed people who could tell me if what I was writing was any good. I needed people like you all need in your disciplinary research to make the active research a collaborative process. I needed the scholarship of teaching and learning community. I found it with some friends of mine. As I said, Matt Kaplan, who's at the Center for Research on Learning and Teaching at the University of Michigan, one grad school colleague who I co-authored a piece with fairly early on, and then I found it with my community at the Carnegie Foundation. And the group of us have written stuff together. The co-edited book I have is done with all of them. I needed that community. And then I needed that community locally as well. I was very fortunate at Eastern, and Matt, beware because I'm going to try to throw some work at you here. I was very fortunate at Eastern that our faculty development director at the time, a woman by the name of Karen Bush, was very supportive of what I did. The Carnegie Foundation actually said to my university, before Jeff can accept his fellowship, you need to make an institutional commitment that the work he does will have a home at Eastern. Seemed reasonable. They agreed to give me a fellowship with the Faculty Development Center, at which I ran learning communities in the Scholarship of Teaching and Learning. These people who were in these learning communities became my local collaborators. They were people that I worked with, people that I spoke with. They provided an audience when I would go to our administrators and say, hey, you got an extra couple $1,000 hanging around? Because I want to bring Randy Bass here. And then Randy would leave, his flight wouldn't even take off, and I'd be back at my associate provost's desk saying, hey, you got a couple extra $1,000 because I want to bring Dan Bernstein here. And I kept doing that. I was extraordinarily fortunate that my administration bought into this work. Extraordinarily fortunate that they were supportive of this work, and that the Faculty Development Center and other places on campus said, this work is important, we are committed to it, and we are committed to providing opportunities for our faculty and chances for them to do it. So who am I? I'm a teacher. And the most important work I do comes when I walk into the classroom and meet with my students. It comes at the Starbucks and at other places on campus when I meet with students who are doing independent studies with me, or with my thesis students, or when I sit down with a student who is really struggling and really in danger and try, too often in vain, but certainly try to rescue them a little bit and help them back. But the other piece of who I am is I'm a teacher who understands that the academy needs to be made hospitable for the kind of work that we want to do. And that's what brings me to places like this. It brings me to these institutional places on my campus where I can say to people, it is important that our faculty do this kind of work, but it is also important that we build organically from the bottom up, that we build these places and we build these homes where this work can be done. So thank you for listening. I hope I've shared some stuff that's useful to you. I am happy to take questions now. I'm also going to be hanging here through lunch, and I'm happy to have conversations or discussions with you then as you wish. So thank you very much.